You're listening to Finding Your Genius Zone with Dirk Nevelle. With the help of successful individuals across industries, Dirk breaks down the unknown parts of every vocation while highlighting the importance of finding a career where you can leverage your natural skills, passions, and interests. Now here's your host, Dirk Nevelle.
Hey everybody, this is Dirk Nevelle. Welcome to my podcast. On with me is a friend of mine, James Sundstad. James, welcome.
Thanks, Dirk. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, man. So James is going to kind of come at it. He's in the world of design, architecture, and branding. I haven't had anybody on the podcast with his background and skill set. So I'm going to kick it back to you, James, and maybe on your. And by the way, I've known James for a long time. When I was a little kid trying to become a freestyle skier, James was one of the studs that we tried to emulate. And I always remember, James, you were, I know you were a bumper and a jumper, but I remember watching you do some ballet. And I had never seen anyone do that, and I was mesmerized by it. And I know you were much more than the ballet skiing, but you were one of the I don't know what you call it, the hot doggers or the, what do you call yourselves? I know like there's different verbiage words you guys use.
Yeah, so the early guys, the Wayne Wongs and Drew Milkinghouse folk were always, hot doggers, but it became freestyle and more formalized as a sport. But yeah, it was a combined skier, which included ballet, which you don't see anybody doing anymore because it kind of dropped off, didn't make the Olympics. But yeah, it was fun days and good to know you back then.
Yeah. So anyway, well, James, why don't you kind of give the audience, they're coming in hot, based on the keywords of design, architecture, and branding. Tell us a little bit about what you do. I know that you work for a couple different companies. Just maybe what you do and kind of how you got into this.
Sure. Learned very quickly as a young guy in middle school that being an artist is not a career, but there was this thing called commercial art or graphic design that where you could apply that. And that's what my focus became. So my career has kind of transitioned from being a creative director and a graphic designer hands-on to a creative director and a brand strategist, getting exposure across all kinds of brand touch points, as we call it. So whether it's a logo you see on something or website or a retail experience, it's all encompassed in representing a brand, whether it be a clothing brand or a restaurant or products that you wear. All those touch points are important to kind of emulate all aspects of what that brand represents. So we're bombarded by brands every day. And that's why the diversity of my background. I now work in architecture, helping retailers like Starbucks and Amazon, Tommy Bahama, a lot of brands like that, stay on brand or shift their brand as the market shifts. So it's really being in touch with kind of the human behavior and the people part of it, as well as how brands and how products go to market.
Okay, so since I'm not in your world, I'm going to ask you some questions that I probably are applicable to people that are young and are curious too. So like when I think of branding, like you talked about logos, you talked about the retail, like the infrastructure, the design, when you walk into a store, it seems like there's a lot of ways or touch points that you can brand as a company. If you are in that world, you focus on like, are you a specialist in one area? Or if somebody hires you, do they expect you to kind of be a branding expert across all platforms?
Yeah, I mean, there are specialists. I mean, starting with graphic design, those that are implementers of brand or creating a brand elements. But the strategy of brand exists in the mind of the customer. So how somebody answers the phone at a company that you're calling, that's a brand experience. It starts to shape the impression of that company, product, or people in that receiver's mind. So yeah, there's specialists, but a generalist like myself is understanding all those different touch points related to a particular product or brand and making sure that they're all consistent in their messaging and their characteristics, if you will, almost like in human characteristics. Okay. I'm a brand, you're a brand. I represent myself in a certain way by how I dress, my mannerisms, all of that. No different with brands in the world. So it's a fascinating field in that way. But like architecture, I work with bunch of great interior designers and people that have built a lot of the buildings here in Seattle. It's not what I do, but I know how to knit all that together. And that's where brand strategy is kind of a great general field. But again, started as a graphic designer, like I said, and there are many specializations within that.
Okay. So when you're hired, are you hired like on a project basis, or would a corporation or say somebody like Nike or Starbucks, would they hire you full time? Like if somebody's curious and they want to get into this, is it a self-employed gig where you have contracts, or is it like you're a W-2 working for a big corporation?
It'd be all three. So freelance, working for somebody else and being hired on a per project basis, or being in an agency, whether it's a brand or design agency or a web design firm, that sort of thing, where again, the service industry, you're supporting a client or being on the client side. I've worked internally on a couple brands, being that kind of brand steward within the company. So there's jobs like that at Amazon. They're hiring quite a bit in that area, for example, because as an online brand, they're doing brick and mortar retail now. So again, they need people that kind of can help with that translation and make sure that that experience is consistent, again, in both those environments.
Okay. I hope this question doesn't come across hard to answer, but like you've been in the business or the industry for a long time. Is there one or two things about you kind of that stand out? Like if somebody's trying to find somebody for a project and they're talking about you, like what is it about you think that makes you good at what you do? Because you have obviously impressive clients and you've been doing this a while with a really good reputation. What is it about you that makes someone good in this career?
Well, I think it's true in life as it is in this kind of work. Being curious and asking questions is really the key. And I think a lot of experts and people that do what I do, or architecture or whatever, think they've got all the answers. I've got all the experience. I'm an expert at this or whatever. And when you come in with that, instead of, hey, I don't work for your company, I don't know your problem, let me learn and be curious and be humble. That's, I think, the approach that clients really appreciate, because they want you to get under the hood with them and feel their pain a little bit on what they're trying to solve for. So as much of that as you can do and not rush to answers, the better solutions will come out of that. So that's what we always find in the work that we do. And that's why it's led to, clients that keep hiring us and people that bring me back for projects because of that approach is empathetic. And I think, they know that I'm there for their problem, not just to say I've got the best, widget for that or whatever. So
do you have to rely on a lot of people to do what you do, or can you be a one-man show and kind of come in and, give advice? Or do you have a large team behind you that does a lot of work that maybe people don't see?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, but it's I'm a generalist, so I'm kind of a jack of all trades because I'm an older guy, right? So I've had the diversity of a lot of different experiences. In fact, I had a little bit of the impersonator syndrome for a while there, because I felt like, I don't have the typical linear path of the job track that's in one direction, but that diversity has actually helped me look at problems from different angles. And then to your question, yeah, I have a lot of resources and experts that are, good at what they do within that. So whether it's a branding person, a graphic designer, somebody that does research and can get me some data that really is going to help validate some of the assumptions that we're making about a brand or a decision that we're going to do, whether it's like at retail or launching a new product. Just having the right kind of resources to bring in to put a team together that can really be the best of all of those areas to get to the best solution. That's how I tend to work. So, and it's worked really well for me.
Is there something that caught you off guard? Like you've been in the business for a long time. Is there anything that maybe you would say, let's say you're somebody was asking you, young adult, maybe your son was interested in following in your footsteps, and you might say, well, this is something I didn't see coming that you need to be aware of. Like maybe not necessarily negative, but something that maybe someone's not going to get by reading a job description about your career. Like, I guess after 30, 40 years of doing what you do, is there something that's caught you off guard or has caught you by surprise?
Yeah, God, I don't know if I have a thing. It always comes down to people. And I think if I was to suggest anything, it's like, do your homework. I think the thing that has caught me off guard the most is when you think you understand a client or that person or their personality, and what their needs are. Assumptions get you in trouble. And asking the right questions and really understanding their background and what is motivating them, can keep a project on track. The worst clients I've had are those that presented or asked or told me that they needed something, that appeared to be clear, but I really didn't dig deep, because you get into things and people's minds change, but also that subjective part gets in there and well, I didn't mean that, or I never actually said that, you assumed, or whatever. So communication skills, whatever the industry, but especially in this one, are really, really key, because we're taking the essence of a person or a brand and being able to communicate that visually and, in all sorts of ways, but we have to do that accurately. So as that translator, you really want to make sure that you're on track and understand your client, and that the scope doesn't get out of line with the expectations of what you're going to get paid for. And believe me, I've had projects go south where I didn't get paid because they said, well, you did something different than I was expecting. So get it in writing, make sure you're clear, ask questions, and don't move too fast.
It's so interesting, James. The communication skills part of it comes into play on so many of my podcasts, whether it's, music composers or shamans, or it always is a fundamental part of success, your ability to communicate. And like, you're in a really creative field. I've had an architecture on, a mutual friend of ours, and at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, right? And it's so I think that's really, for the audience, it's really important to kind of pay attention to. You might be really creative, but you're going to need to be able to have the people skills too, to kind of get to where you need to go. Is there anything about the career that, if you had the ability, you would remove it? Like, is there something about it? I don't want to say that you hate or that you really don't like, but every job and career has things, I think. Is there something that's extra difficult about your career that maybe somebody that wants to pursue it needs to know about?
Extra difficult. Keeping up with technology, I think, that's one part of it. I'm mindful of the kind of the B part of the people part, branding and brand strategy, and as well as architecture. But this part of my world is about anticipating how people want to live and be in the world. So whether it's how they move through space. So when we talked about the architect that you had on before, it's very similar. You're building buildings for people. You're building parks for people. You're building stores that people want to be in, restaurants, cafes. It's anticipating the human condition, and whether it's appealing to the senses, sight, sound, touch, all those things, really having a good pulse on what people's need states are and what it is that makes an environment desirable. Maybe it's just lighting or how much the sound bounces in a space. Those things are all really critical. And if you leave some of those out and don't consider them, you can make a beautiful space, but the sound is terrible. People can't describe why they don't want to be in there, but it's just too loud or whatever. Those are the things that you just got to consider, all of those elements in everything that you do. And I think it's in communication with people, and as well as creating these environments and touch points for people. So I've had times where I didn't consider all of those things, and the right solution didn't come from it.
Well, let's go backwards a little bit. You and I went to the same junior high, and then did you go to Bellevue High School?
I went to Sammamish.
Sammamish, okay. My wife went there. And then after that, just kind of give us the rundown. Did you go to UW, Wazoo?
Half a step back. So the middle school that we went to, and I think this is kind of a key point. I was a kind of a lost kid. I lost my father when I was very young. really didn't know what I wanted to do. And there was an art teacher, Gary Adrian, who saw that I had some talent and said, "Hey, I see what you can do and I believe in you." And he's the one that gave me CA magazine, which was about graphic design. He says, "I think you could do this." And from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to go do this because I just needed a sense of direction. I didn't have a father figure or mentor that believed in me. And we talked about this a little more prior, but so as far as schooling went, I was like, I went to Bellevue Community College for a little while, but I wanted to go to this one school called Burnley School of Professional Art, which was the only place at the time that you could learn graphic design. Graphic design was not a program at major colleges. It was kind of a specialty school. And although I didn't go the traditional college route, which looks good on a resume, I went to this one place that really taught me in 2.5, 3 years what I really needed to know for this industry. So it wasn't the typical path, but I think this is an issue for young folks today, which is like, do I really need to go to college, or do I need to go to college because my family wants me to, or do I need to go to college to figure out what I want to do? And I don't think there's a right answer for anybody in that, other than sometimes I think it's helpful to at least know a direction of what you want to do and then find the best way to learn it. And for me, it was like just getting out into the workforce. So other people that you've had on your program, I was a cutter in a garage for a ski wear company, cutting fabric for the ski wear sponsor of mine that in the winter I was skiing for, in the summer I was working for them. It was a part of moving me down the path of things I was interested in so I could discover where my skills would apply. So I have a 25-year-old son right now who's trying to figure that out. And I just keep telling him, just keep moving. Like, you're working at a restaurant now, but like, who do you know there? Who are you meeting as clients that might open a door for something that you're really interested in? And being out there, being curious, asking questions, once again, is what that discovery and that career path came out of for me. So I would encourage that of anybody. Like, if you're curious about graphic design or architecture or just branding or brand strategy in that direction, do things that fit into that. It's a stair step potentially to something that you're interested in. And in the meantime, you're making money and you're learning, right? So it might not be college for everybody. And it wasn't for me, not the traditional college.
Yeah, I didn't realize that you knew your direction so early in life, kind of. I mean, you haven't really strayed, have you? You've pretty much been in the same world since high school?
It's been the North Star in this thread through everything. But like I said before, the companies I worked for and the things I've done, I represented Dale Chihuly. I moved to England and I helped build his brand over there by helping with big installations and selling his art to wealthy people for their homes. I mean, that doesn't fit a graphic designer's route, but that led me to retail design and, working with big architecture firms because of I still had this through line. So it's typical in one sense, but not in another. So again, just keep moving because I've had amazing experiences. I've traveled all over the world. I've been very, very blessed and fortunate, given where I came from, to have the experiences that I've had. So it all comes from being curious and just keep on looking for change and looking for something new.
I'm guessing I know the answer to this question, but if you were to go back in time, sounds like you'd probably do exactly the same route you did. I mean, maybe not change anything, or would you change anything?
Gosh, I think it's a lesson that I've learned is like having regrets and not living in the moment is not healthy, because I've had I'm one of those that's like woulda, shoulda, coulda. Like you had a path that was like maybe out of some of those same things, like, well, I need to make money, or this seems like the right career path. And you make some personal compromises to go that way. And, I think everything happens for a reason. Even my father's passing, I'm a different person than probably I would have been if I did have that mentorship and he was alive, because he would have been maybe choosing some paths for me or pushing me in a direction. And I think I have no regrets. I think it's been a great path and learning experience. I wouldn't trade it. There's some things that I wish I would have made better choices in, but again, having regrets about that is not helping me move forward, and better to be looking forward than it is looking back.
With I talk about AI often in my podcast. I mean, with technology and AI and everything that's going on, is your career, is it still considered a good career to get into, or do you feel like it's going to change and will jobs be eliminated, or do you feel like it's a safe place to plant your pole?
Yeah, I think it's just wise to look at AI as it's another tool for us to use, because I think the human element always needs to be in there. I think we can just do much more faster. Yeah, I mean, AI can do graphic design. Is that going to mean graphic designers go away? I don't think so. I think it's just them being current and using those tools to augment and expedite the solutions that you can come up with is the smart way to look at it. Same thing with architecture. It will accelerate the ability to do complex projects that normally take 5 years, can probably be done in 2, maybe. But there still needs to be that human element, I think. And that's the safest thing. Like I talked about before, branding is about how people experience a space and environments. A computer can emulate environments, but I don't think it's going to have that discernment of really appealing to the senses. And I think it takes people to do that. So I look at it as a tool, not a replacement. Who knows? But
Who knows?
Yeah,
I got it. What about your lifestyle or the lifestyle? Like, I've seen you out. I know that you're having fun. I mean, I've seen you at concerts. I mean, you travel. Like, is this a career that gives you a lot of freedom if you want to have, a family, or you want to have some side hustles, things that you do on the side? I mean, is this a 9 to 5 thing, or are you tied to your phone, 24/7?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what career you end up in, but I've had my own agency for 18 years. I had a lot of freelance time, windows that I was freelancing, working for others. Currently, I'm in a full-time role, but I have a lot of latitude, can work remotely. But it's good to have the collaboration with people here as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think having a mix of those things is really, really beneficial. So it depends on, I think some people really need to be employed by somebody and have that structure, and others can kind of self-motivate and be entrepreneurial. And I was definitely more the latter in my early days, and kind of never wanted to work for anyone else. But again, I've found that people and collaboration is where the sweet spot is. So however you do that, that's, it can be one foot in house and one foot out, or either or. I think they're both, good options.
So it's not a position where you're locked in an office 9 to 5 where you sign in, sign out. Like, you have freedom.
Yeah.
As far as compensation, I'm not asking you, James, what you make, but like, how are people compensated? I know there's different architectures, there's designers, but when you're dealing with a project or a large corporate client like Starbucks or Microsoft or Apple, is it hey, we're going to pay you X amount for 3 months? Or how does that, I mean, money is always something I think people should think about as far as how they're compensated. How are you, or how are people in your world compensated?
Well, on the freelance side, or being on the agency side, it's usually a scope of work is established, and then you're working against that deliverable. So, it's a service industry. So, you're paying X for Y, and being clear on what you're delivering on. So as a freelancer, that's basically what you're doing. Like, how many hours would it take me to get to this? And internally, you're working out, I want to make X an hour, so it's going to take this long to get to that solution. So, and you can create your own margin with that. So there's a latitude there. You can do well on a project, or you can lose your shorts. It just depends on how well you manage it. So I've done that for quite some time. And, currently I work with an agency, an architecture firm where I am in-house. So I have a salary, and it's fixed. And then I have incentives beyond that, because I do some client management and some business development that, can give me bonuses and that sort of thing. So there's kind of best of both worlds in that scenario. So it just depends on what kind of structure you need. And, if you can be working with somebody else and do that more 9 to 5-ish, I don't punch a clock, but, it's just, everybody's got a different need for stability as far as income and, ability to either do that on your own and juggle a little bit, or, show up in an office most often. And I'm only in 3 days a week. I work remotely 2 days. So,
Okay. Kind of getting back to advice. Is there anything I'm not asking you about your career that, since I'm not in your world, that I should be asking you, or anything on the tip of your tongue that you think, if, let's just say you have a bunch of young adults that are wanting to get into, say, branding or architecture or design or whatever, is there something that you think you should tell them, or that I'm not asking? Because I've messed up before in these podcasts and I haven't asked the right questions. Are there better questions I should be asking, or are there answers or something that you might want to leave with the audience just to help them make better decisions?
yeah, I mean, putting my, my mindset into what it might be like to just be considering or starting out in a career like this, having a mentor, having somebody witness, or somebody that you can shadow, or, just doing, like we used to do. People don't do it as much anymore, but just, informational interviews, like, people who know somebody who's in a kind of role in an agency or architecture firm or whatever it might be, that is in parallel with what you're interested in, and to just set up an hour with them or a half an hour and just say, hey, I want to ask some questions and learn about your world and see if that's something I'm really interested in. Even if you know that that's where you want to go, just to get different perspectives of people that are working in that world, then you get the gut feel of like, yeah, I could see myself doing that, or, ooh, actually, no, that's not what I want to be doing day to day. Because I think you want to get a flavor for it, before you dive in. And then of course, internships and those sorts of things are the next step beyond that. But get your feet wet with smart people, like, really choose who you get mentored by. And oftentimes just showing that initiative with somebody who's high up at a really important company that you really want to work for, they'll appreciate it, that you had the cojones to go after that and to make that call and to set up that meeting. And, it can go far.
I think, did you say North Star or Finding Your North? I want to make sure I'm quoting you accurately.
Yeah, I was saying North Star. I mean, I don't know if you've read the book Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
It was one that recently kind of resonated. My son and I have referenced it a lot as I'm kind of coaching him, and we're trying to help him find his path. But just, that even if it's a short-term goal, you said, like, if it's making money, or if it's like, I want to be better at this, but what small incremental steps that can you do repeatedly that move you towards that? And again, in that book, they talk a lot about goals can be too lofty. I want to lose weight. Like, well, don't we all? But like, what are actionable steps, right? And I think that's just having some small achievable intentions and having a North Star to point towards is super, super important, Yeah,
I mean, that's where I guess I wanted to go, is like, even trying to define what that North Star is. Like, sometimes that is a little lofty. Like, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm thinking about your son. I'm thinking about me when I was that age. I guess the question is there advice on helping people kind of try to figure that out? Like, I mean, I guess I often say, pay attention to kind of what lights you up, or maybe what you do on a Saturday when you have a whole day, and, you do it for 8 hours and it feels like 30 minutes. But there's so many voices in kids' heads nowadays, and there's so much pressure, especially with social media. Do you have any thoughts on slowing it down, and whether it's your son or somebody else? It's like, is it as simple as just try to figure out what brings you joy, or is there another way you would say it?
Yeah, maybe an example is, since you referenced my son, he what he brought up was, I want to be in service to others. I don't want to be just selfish. I want to be, in service or helping people, but I don't want to work at a nursing home. But I also want structure. I want, like, I don't want to go into the military, but I want something that has structure. And then somehow firefighting came up, and like the lights went off, because it was like, oh, I can be in service. I can take care of people. Like, I'm in a tribe. And I think tribe is the other term that's really important. Just, like my ski world or my professional world, or, whatever, I've got different tribes, and it's really what keeps me going. And, Mason sort of has found his tribe, I think, in knowing that, firefighters are there for each other in the way that if you're in the military, it's similar, but it's different. But there's that in service part that resonated for him. So to your original point, like, yeah, where's the juice? Where do you get lit up? And where's your shine? And if you can't find it, who do you look to where you see their shine and you want to be a part of it? For me, it's musicians. I've got all these friends that are musicians that are quite well known. And it's just like, there's an admiration for that skill set that I don't have, but they're my friends and I get to live vicariously through them. That's just so inspirational, right? And then I take that energy over into areas that I can execute in, and it gives me that much more juice, right? So find where your shine is, be a witness for others, really, really try and, find that North Star. And even if it's just like, I want to figure out what my North Star is, there's ways to make steps towards that direction, right? So if graphic design and architecture and or brand strategy is something that somebody's interested in, find the people that are good at that and start poking around.
I have to ask you, I think the last time, I know we were supposed to play in the golf tournament and I got sick, but I think the last time I saw you, we were at a concert and it was, I forgot. Do you remember the two guys? Guy's got a big beard now. It was an English. Do you remember that? I saw you and Burgess there.
I'm spacing now. Who was that?
Yeah.
Where was it?
It was a climate pledge. And
Cheers for Fears, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, like with music, I've seen photos of you, I think with Brandy, and what's the connection? Is it just you roll in that crew or that tribe, or is it just you're always going to concerts or what?
I think it's a combination of those things, but again, just like I said before, just being curious.
Yeah.
Became best friends with the lead singer of a 90s band that's quite well known, Toad the Wet Sprocket, guy named Glenn Phillips. Yep. And that just came out of like, they were coming through England with his family and they needed a place to stay. I was trying to help find a hotel. They came and stayed with us, complete strangers, on the floor of our place for a week. And we become long best friends, just kind of putting yourself out there. I had a friend who's a friend with Brandy Carlisle. That happened. I've met Elton John. I met a lot of people in his orbit because of that. And it's just, being a real person in all those kind of situations just opens doors. Brandy's an example. She used to play at a small club here in Seattle up on Queen Anne. And I used to go see her in my college days. And when I finally met her here at the Gorge and was able to say, do you remember the Paragon? And she's like, oh my God, you're my longest fan. And we became fast friends just because of that. People that remember and, are humble about it. And you just are curious and put your, if you think you should go do something or show up at an event, or your intuition, your gut instinct is to go there, go, because it's always going to be right. Because that's why it's your gut instinct, right? So like the Brandy Carlisle thing, that came out of that, right? I almost didn't go to a show and I knew I should. And then, met her and Annie Lennox and a whole bunch of others. So it's been fun to that's being curious in life, right? Keep going with that. The things that you are passionate about, just lean into it, Great things will happen.
One of the questions I ask, and that's kind of where I was going on is there a dream job? Like sometimes people say I'm doing it, but if there was, is there a career or job out there? Like, would it be to be a musician, or is there something that you would love to do if you had the talent?
Wow. Two-part answer. One, a musician. Yeah, that was one of those things that, wanted to do, and not for the fame and glory of it, but just to be masterful with an instrument and the camaraderie of a band and, creating something that people like. But, the other people part that I think would be the other career would be more in the sort of counseling, psychology, mentoring people. And some of that I think is coming for me because there's some things teeing up in that direction. But kind of being a witness and coaching other people and sharing, imparting a little bit of some feedback to them and, being helpful in that way, whether it's career or personally. I've been kind of a connoisseur of all kinds of, painting therapies and all kinds of stuff just to kind of help me with my advancement and growth as a human, and helping others do that, I think would be a fun thing as well.
Cool. No, I love music. I have no talent. I have talent in recognizing music, but
there you go.
In playing it, I've just got a fascination with that skill set of just,
I hear you.
Especially the non-lyrical, like movie soundtracks. That would be my dream, I think, is if I could. I love people, but I'm kind of an introvert. So if I could go into my studio, write the music, give it to whatever, and go hang out with my kids or my dog or on my farm, I think that would be a pretty cool life. As far as the coaching, are you? I'm just curious. Are you considering going back to school to get a degree, or would you just do that with kind of just your life experience?
Well, I think life experience, and then I do have a couple certifications, but in that direction. But somebody kind of magically came into my life through a mutual friend that's developing a game, but it's a kind of a psychological game or a tool, not about winning. It's about communication, but it's actually a game that you do in silence with these word chips. And it's really been profound to see how it's allowed people to connect when you stop the verbal communication and you actually do it through a different channel. It's actually what it does, synapses in the brain and all that, just allowing you to feel closer to somebody and open up conversation after you play it has been really interesting. So it's got me thinking more about getting back into that world, because I'm doing the packaging for this game and helping market it. And I do see a real opportunity, and for children that have had trauma, adults that are working through certain things with themselves or with others, couples, et cetera. So I just think I've got some skill sets in that direction. I think this particular project that I'm working on will play well into that world. So that's brought that to the forefront. It's always been there. I just never thought, I could make a career at that, but never say never.
Yeah, no, I get it. Okay. So as we end this, again, is there anything else you want to say or leave with the audience? That, again, imagine somebody in high school, college, it's just like really struggling. And I think you gave some advice earlier, but anything that maybe you want to leave them with at the very end?
Yeah, just find what you're passionate about and trust your instincts about that, and the first job, the second job, or even just keep moving. If you're always thinking about the things that you're interested in, that couple of jobs might not be right in the zone, but those skill sets, if it's working in a restaurant and working with people, you'll use it. It's helpful. So just keep moving.
James, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a good day.
All right.